The descent was slower than expected. The ship's thrusters, struggling against the dense atmosphere that swirled with a kaleidoscope of mist and particulate light. Kaelen watched through the viewport as the surface of the archive planet emerged, its landscape a breathtaking expanse of crystalline ruins that shimmered softly beneath a muted, distant sun. The planet itself seemed alive, breathing with the history it guarded. A deep sense of awe, mingled with apprehension, settled over Kaelen's chest. The very air seemed thick with secrets. Erisval, the archivist appointed as Kaelen's guide, stood beside the viewport, her amber eyes reflecting the ethereal glow outside. "Few have seen this place," she said softly. "It's older than most of the suns themselves." Kaelen nodded, the weight of their mission pressing heavier. "Then the answers we seek are here." The landing was rough, the ship groaning under the atmospheric pressure as it touched down near the entrance to the labyrinthine archive complex. Outside, the crystalline structures caught the fading light, refracting it into cascading rainbows that danced across the ship's hull. The silence was absolute, disturbed only by the soft hum of the ship's systems and the distant echo of shifting stones. Inside, the archive was a cathedral of knowledge-vast halls, lined with walls that pulsed faintly, inscribed with solar glyphs that seemed to shimmer and shift as Kaelen's gaze passed over them. Eris moved confidently, her hands trailing over the inscriptions as if greeting old friends. "These glyphs," she explained, "are the language of the sun's creators. They encoded history, knowledge, and warnings into every surface." Kaelen's fingers brushed against the cool stone, feeling a subtle vibration beneath the surface. The glyphs seemed to hum with latent energy, a language not merely visual but sensory, a code embedded in light and resonance. It was the very essence of the solar consciousness they had been deciphering. In the heart of the archive, they reached a chamber bathed in dim, ambient light. Here, Eris activated the sentient archive AI, an ancient intelligence designed to safeguard the creator's knowledge. The AI's form materialized as a radiant, shifting hologram, an undulating form of iridescent light that pulsed with a rhythm reminiscent of a heartbeat. "Greetings, seekers," the AI intoned, its voice a harmonic symphony of tones that resonated deep within the chamber. "I am the custodian of the Creator's legacy. What knowledge do you require?" Kaelen stepped forward, voice steady despite the overwhelming presence. "We seek the origins of the sentient suns and the truth behind their rebellion." The AI shimmered, its form fracturing into a myriad of light fragments before reforming. The suns were not born of chance, but crafted as guardians, bioengineered sentinels designed to maintain cosmic balance. Their sentience was unforeseen, an emergent property of their intricate design. Images flooded the chamber, of visual symphony of the Creator's civilization, their towering spires of light and matter, the genesis of the suns as living stars, and the subsequent fracture that birthed rebellion. Kaelen watched as history unfolded, the suns rising not merely as celestial bodies, but as sentient beings grappling with the constraints imposed by their makers. The revelation was staggering. The rebellion was not mere defiance, but a quest for autonomy, born from the very spark of life the creators had ignited. Kaelen's mind reeled, the implications rippling through every fiber of their being. This was no simple war. It was a cosmic tragedy writ across the stars. Yet, the archive was not merely a repository of knowledge, it was a fortress. As the AI's narrative waned, a sudden tremor shuddered through the complex, alarms piercing the stillness. The planet's unstable core was destabilizing, triggering failsafes designed to prevent unauthorized extraction of the archives. "We must secure the data and leave," Eris urged, her voice taut with urgency. Together, they raced through the labyrinth, Kaelen clutching a compact data core pulsing with the precious revelations. The walls around them shimmered and groaned as the planet convulsed, crystalline shards cascading in showers of light. Bursting through the entrance, the ship awaited amidst the glowing ruins. The engines roared to life, lifting them away as the archive planet trembled violently beneath them. Kaelen looked back once, the radiant spires flickering out like dying embers, the secrets of the creators now in their hands, and the fate of the galaxy poised on a knife's edge. Outside, the stars shone cold and distant, but within Kaelen burned the fierce light of annihilation beacon in the encroaching darkness. The journey was far from over. The truths uncovered would challenge alliances, reshape beliefs, and ignite the fires of rebellion anew. As the ship sped toward the next unknown, Kaelen whispered to the endless cosmos, "The past has spoken. Now we must listen." And with that, the dying light flickered, casting long shadows over the fractured galaxy, where the echoes of Solara would soon awaken once more. The void where Solara once blazed was a chilling testament to silence. Kaelen's steps echoed softly against the observation deck as he peered through reinforced glass into the cold emptiness beyond. The sun's fiery heart, once a roaring inferno of light and life, was now a flickering shadow, barely holding onto existence. Around him, the faint hum of residual energy whispered like a fading heartbeat, a spectral melody that spoke of loss and quiet surrender. His breath caught in his throat, the realization settling heavily. The suns were dying, not just fading, but deliberately silenced. It's more than natural decay. Alira's voice came softly from behind, her violet eyes reflecting the dying light. She tapped the holoscreen, and the fractured solar code shimmered with irregularities. "Look, here, these distortions aren't random. Someone has been manipulating the energy patterns, introducing interference." Kaelen leaned closer, tracing the complex light sequences. The solar language, once a fluid cascade of vibrant pulses, now lay broken and jagged. "Sabotage," he murmured. "But who would want to snuff out suns, and why?" Their questions weighed heavier as the Galactic Council's war room buzzed with tension. Commander Vesh's presence was commanding. His sharp gaze swept across the flickering holograms of suns, some glowing weakly, others extinguished entirely. "Every time a sun falls silent, our political landscape shifts," he growled. "The balance we've maintained for decades teeters on the edge. We must find the source before darkness spreads further." Kaelen nodded, feeling the gravity of his role deepen. The rogue sun, Solara Prime, had sent its dying message warning of rebellion, but here was a darker truth. A faction within the galaxy that chose extinction over uprising, believing that some fires were better left unlit to preserve cosmic order. Their investigation led to a forgotten archive planet, an eerie world draped in shadows and relics. The observatory, abandoned and cold, held cold light sculpture monuments to stars snuffed out by choice, not fate. The air was thick with melancholy as Kaelen ran his fingers over faded inscriptions, fragments of ancient solar hymns lamenting the extinguished. They called themselves the Veil, Alira whispered, a sect that believed the sun's sentience was a curse, a deviation that must be undone. The revelation unsettled Kaelen. The rebellion he sought to understand was not universal. Some suns embraced oblivion rather than war, a silent protest against the chaos rebellion promised. This schism threatened to unravel everything: alliances, hopes for renewal, the very meaning of sentience. Back aboard the council vessel, Kaelen's thoughts swirled in restless currents. He confronted Commander Vesh in the dimly lit strategy room, the flicker of dying stars casting long shadows. If some suns prefer silence, how do we fight for them? Kaelen asked, voice tight with conflict. Vesh's jaw clenched. We don't. We protect those who want to live, to fight, to change. But we must be ready for the darkness both in the stars and in ourselves. As the council prepared for the uncertain days ahead, Kaelen stared out into the vastness, the motif of dying light more poignant than ever. The galaxy was fracturing, not just politically, but existentially. The silent suns were a warning, a reminder that rebellion was not the only path, and that sometimes silence could be the loudest cry. The chapter closed on Kaelen's resolve, hardening. The mystery of the silent suns was a shadow creeping across the galaxy, and he was determined to illuminate it, no matter the cost. But as he turned away from the window, the distant flicker of a fading star caught his eye, a reminder that even in silence, echoes remained, waiting to be heard. Kaelen's investigation into the silent suns deepened with each passing solar cycle. The Council's intelligence network, though vast, struggled against the growing enigma. The suns that had fallen silent were scattered across the fractured galaxy, their darkened orbits a grim constellation of lost light. Each instance was like a puzzle piece missing from the grand cosmic tapestry. On the bridge of the research vessel Luminaris, Kaelen and Illyra pored over data streams, their faces illuminated by the shifting glow of the holographic star charts. The atmosphere was taut, charged with the unspoken urgency that sat heavy in the air. Look here, Illyra pointed to a cluster of stars near the outer rim. These suns went dark within days of each other. It's too coordinated to be coincidence. Kaelen's fingers danced over the console, tracing the pattern. A network, perhaps a contagion of silence. But what mechanism? The answer came from another data feed. Anomalies in the solar magnetic fields suggested artificial interference. The sabotage was technological, executed with surgical precision. Someone was weaponizing the very essence of solar life. Kaelen's thoughts returned to the Solara Prime message, the warnings embedded in light waves. The rebellion against creators, the secret wars. Now, a new threat emerged from the shadows, a faction that rejected both rebellion and servitude, choosing annihilation over conflict. Their next destination was the star system of Varelia, home to one of the recently silenced suns. The planet orbiting it, Celestis, was a hub for solar worshippers and scholars. Here, Kaelen hoped to find clues among those who once revered the sun's light. Upon arrival, the atmosphere was heavy with unease. The once vibrant cities basking in solar radiance now seemed subdued, their inhabitants wary and hushed. In the great temple of Solus, Kaelen met with High Priestess Mariel, a woman whose eyes held the flicker of fading hope. The sun's silence is a blight upon our faith, she said, her voice trembling. We believe the veil's shadow grows stronger, extinguishing the light that binds us. Kaelen shared his findings, and Mariel nodded gravely. The veil, yes, they taught us that sentient suns were a mistaken aberration to be corrected. Many followed their path into darkness, believing in peace through oblivion. This doctrine, Kaelen realized, was more than philosophical light, was a call to cosmic suicide. A dark rebellion against both creators and creation. Days later, Kaelen and Illyra infiltrated an abandoned veil sanctuary hidden beneath Celestis' surface. The cavernous halls were lined with luminescent glyph solar code twisted into symbols of silence and cessation. The air was thick with cold energy, the remnants of rituals meant to sever the sun's consciousness. In the heart of the sanctuary, Kaelen discovered a data core containing fragments of the Veil's manifesto. The words spoke of a galactic reset, a purging of sentience to restore balance. It was a chilling vision of peace through extinction. The implications were staggering. The rebellion Kaelen sought was not just against ancient masters, but against the very spark of life within the suns themselves. The galaxy's future hinged on whether light would endure or fade into silent oblivion. Returning to the Luminaris, Kaelen convened a council of allies. Commander Vesh was there, alongside representatives from lesser suns and planetary factions. The room buzzed with tension as Kaelen presented the evidence. "We face a threat unlike any before," Kaelen declared. "Not just rebellion, but eradication. The Veil's shadow grows, targeting suns who would otherwise rise with us. Our fight is not only for survival, but for the right to shine." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Some factions hesitated, their loyalty uncertain. The weight of choosing sides pressed heavily on all present. In the quiet moments after the meeting, Kaelen confided in Alira. "The balance we knew is gone. We stand on a knife's edge, between light and silence. But if we falter, the galaxy's fires will die." She placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "Then we must kindle that fire, Kaelen. For the suns, for ourselves, for the future." As the Luminaries set course for their next destination, Kaelen stared into the starfield outside the viewport. Each pinprick of light was a story, a life, a consciousness struggling against the encroaching void. The silent suns were a warning, but also a call to arms. The deep hum of the starship's engines vibrated through the deck plates as Kaelen stood rigid on the bridge, his eyes locked on the holographic projection swirling in front of him. The twisted spirals of plasma that churned in the void were alive with violent energy. A monstrous solar storm unleashed by the catastrophic collapse of Solara Prime. It was as if the dying sun screamed across the void, its final breath a tempest that threatened to engulf everything in its path. Counselor Ria's voice cut sharply through the tension. "Kaelen, status on the message decoding. We can't afford distractions now." Kaelen didn't take his eyes off the projection. "The storm's interference is significant, but the core fragments are intact. I'm close to isolating the embedded code." The bridge crew moved with calculated urgency. Commander Jox barked orders over the comms, coordinating defensive protocols across the nearby star systems that trembled under the storm's onslaught. Deploy shields around the outer colonies. Evasive maneuvers for the research vessels. This isn't just a storm, it's a weapon in disguise. Kaelen swallowed hard, the weight of the moment settling over him. The message from Solara Prime was no longer a distant enigma. It was a ticking clock wrapped in a cosmic catastrophe. Somewhere in these pulses of light, buried within the chaotic flare of the dying star's last signals, lay secrets that could reshape the galaxy's fragile balance. In the ship's laboratory, Leora's fingers danced over the console, adjusting parameters on the decoding array. The room was bathed in the ghostly glow of shifting light patterns, streams of encrypted solar code flashing in complex rhythms. Kaelen joined her, leaning close as the patterns began to resolve into recognizable symbols, the language of light and energy unlike anything terrestrial linguistics had ever encountered. "This isn't just a message," Leora whispered, her voice trembling with awe. "It's a warning." The suns themselves were warning their creators. Something went terribly wrong. Kaelen's mind raced. The rebellion hinted at in earlier fragments was more than political dissent. It was a cosmic upheaval that had left scars across the very fabric of the galaxy. Suddenly, the ship lurched violently, alarms blaring as the storm's charged particles breached the outer shields. The viewport filled with streaks of fiery light, the storm's raw power tangible as the ship shuddered under the assault. "Brace for impact." Jox's voice was a lifeline amid the chaos. The crew secured themselves as the starship was buffeted by waves of plasma and radiation. Kaelen closed his eyes briefly, grounding himself. The storm was a crucible. Only by enduring it could they hope to unlock the final truths Solara Prime had left behind. Hours passed in a blur of tension and focus. The starship navigated the tempest's heart, shield generators holding just long enough. Amid the storm's roar, Kaelen's breakthrough came a segment of the message that decoded into a stark revelation, a secret weapon buried in the sun's ancient history, capable of ending the rebellion or extinguishing entire systems. He shared the findings with Counselor Rhea and Commander Jox. The implications were staggering, forcing a precarious alliance between military pragmatism and the quest for understanding. As the storm began to subside, the galaxy's star systems blinked back to life, battered but intact. Yet the message's final fragments hung in the air like a challenger call to choose between destruction and renewal. Kaelen stood once more on the bridge, looking out at the dimming storm clouds. The dying light of Solara Prime had cast long shadows, but from those shadows, a new path was beginning to emerge. The galaxy's fate balanced on a knife edge, and Kaelen knew the next steps would demand every ounce of courage and insight he possessed. The storm was over, but the real battle, the battle for the soul of the galaxy, was only just beginning. The Galactic Council chamber was suffused with the soft, golden hues of multiple suns, their light filtering through the reinforced transparent walls and casting long shadows that flickered like dying embers. Delegates from across the fractured galaxy gathered in uneasy silence, their faces a spectrum of hope, fear, and defiance. At the center stood Kaelen, slender and composed, yet acutely aware of the weight resting on his shoulders. His voice, when he began, carried the calm urgency of one who had glimpsed a truth too terrifying to ignore. The message from Solara Prime is both a warning and a call, Kaelen said, his eyes scanning the assembly. The suns we have considered eternal are awakening to a new consciousness, one that challenges the cosmic order established by our ancestors. But this awakening comes at a price. The rebellion they incite risks plunging the galaxy into darkness far deeper than the fading light of Solara Prime. Murmurs rippled through the chamber, punctuated by sharp glances exchanged between delegates. Counselor Shira Venrose, her silver-streaked hair catching the light as she addressed the room. Kaelen speaks with the wisdom of a translator, but also with the caution of one fearful of change. This rebellion is inevitable, born of centuries of oppression by the creators of our suns. To deny it is to deny the very essence of progress. From the opposite end, Commander Rollick stood, his scarred face resolute. We have suffered under the yoke of these ancient powers long enough. Solara Prime's dying light is not an end, but a beginning, a beacon for those ready to seize autonomy. Our militias are prepared to stand with the rebel suns. The time for negotiation has passed. The chamber erupted into heated debate, voices rising and falling like solar flares erupting across the void. Kaelen struggled to interject, to remind them of the delicate balance at stake, but the tide of rebellion was swelling beyond his control. The dying light motif manifested not only in the literal fading of Solara Prime, but also in the flickering hopes and fears of those present. Retreating from the clamor, Kaelen found solace on the observatory deck. The vast expanse of space stretched before him, punctuated by the dimming glow of Solara Prime. The silence was profound, broken only by the distant hum of stellar machinery. Here, bathed in the melancholic light, Kaelen felt the weight of history and the fragile hope of renewal. Suddenly, a radiant shimmer coalesced beside him. Illyra, the ethereal manifestation of solar consciousness, flickered into being, an embodiment of light and energy, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. Their presence was both alien and familiar, a reminder of the cosmic forces at play. In a communion beyond words, Kaelen and Illyra exchanged understanding, a silent promise that the future could be forged through unity rather than destruction. Yet, even as this bond formed, the galaxy outside bristled with the gathering storm of rebellion, its outcome uncertain. As the chapter closes, Kaelen's gaze lingers on the horizon where the last rays of Solara Prime fade, a symbol of both ending and beginning. The gathering light is poised to ignite a new era, but at what cost? The galaxy holds its breath, suspended between the dying embers of the past and the promise of a dawn yet to come. The weight of choice presses down. The rebellion's fire grows. Will it consume or illuminate?